On January 24, 2009, in the Spanish city of Seville, 17-year-old Marta del Castillo left her home to meet her boyfriend, Miguel Carcaño. They needed to discuss aspects of their relationship. After saying goodbye to her family, Marta walked out the door, never to be seen alive again. For 21 days, authorities and loved ones searched desperately for answers. Then, on February 13, 2009, police finally arrested the primary suspect. Miguel Carcaño confessed, admitting responsibility for Marta's disappearance and claiming to have disposed of both her body and all evidence. However, no one could have predicted that this case would become one of the most complex, erratic, and contradictory investigations in Spain's history. Every day, we witness the darkest sides of human nature. The pain inflicted by one person upon another is an unfortunate reality of our society. As investigators of true crime, we are committed to uncovering shocking cases and diving into the minds of those who commit these acts. I am Lucas, and today I bring you another chilling true crime story. Marta del Castillo was born on June 19, 1991, in Seville, Spain, to Eva Casanueva and Antonio del Castillo. A bright and lively 17-year-old, she was attending high school when her life took a tragic turn. On January 24, 2009, Marta was chatting with her best friend, Sylvia Fernandez, when she abruptly ended their conversation. She told Sylvia she was in a hurry. Her boyfriend, Miguel Carcaño, was waiting for her downstairs. Marta needed to clear up some things with him and promised to share everything when she returned. As she made her way out, Marta ran into her father in the hallway. Concerned, he advised her not to get on Miguel's motorcycle. She responded with nothing but a kiss on his cheek. At 5:30 p.m., she left home. Hours passed, and when Marta didn't return, her family grew anxious. Her mother began calling friends and acquaintances, desperately seeking information about her whereabouts. Everyone had the same response: Marta must be with Miguel. But when Miguel failed to answer their calls, Marta's father decided to go to his house. He rang the doorbell repeatedly, but no one opened the door. Then, a friend of Miguel's, Samuel Benitez, finally provided an answer, but something didn't add up. Samuel claimed that Miguel had dropped Marta off at home around midnight. However, it was only 11:45 p.m. at the time of their conversation. This discrepancy set off alarm bells for Marta's mother. At 2 a.m., after exhausting all possible leads, the family reported Marta missing. They had no idea that this case would become one of the most infamous disappearances in Spanish history. 4 hours later, police officially identified the first suspect, Miguel Carcaño. By 1:30 p.m. that day, a third missing person report had been filed. However, law enforcement remained slow to act. The family's frustration grew as the hours dragged on. Only after 17 hours, when official protocol required action, did officers begin searching for Marta. In the days following her disappearance, her family took it upon themselves to gather testimonies from her friends and acquaintances. What followed was a case filled with twists, conflicting confessions, and an ongoing search for the truth. The case gained national attention, with around 3,000 people following the developments, as it was covered extensively on television and in newspapers. After 21 days of searching, on February 13th, the police finally located Miguel Carcaño, a 20-year-old who took full responsibility for the crime. He confessed to murdering Marta and disposing of her body in the Guave River, which was close to his apartment. However, Carcaño also revealed a crucial detail. He had not acted alone. He identified Samuel Benitez as an accomplice, claiming Benitez had helped dispose of the body. Benitez later accepted responsibility. Carcaño also implicated others: Javier Garcia Marin, a problematic miner known as El Cuco, Francisco Delgado, Carcaño's brother, and Delgado's girlfriend, Maria Garcia. All 5 were arrested. During interrogations, conflicting statements emerged while authorities continued the meticulous search for Marta's body in the river. On February 16th, Carcaño reiterated his confession before a judge. In contrast, Samuel Benitez denied involvement, stating he had only confessed due to police pressure. Then, on March 18th, Carcaño requested to make another statement, changing his version of events. He claimed that both he and El Cuco had assaulted Marta at knife point before the minor strangled her. They allegedly transported her body to Delgado's house before discarding it in a garbage container. Following this revelation, the judge ordered the suspension of the river search and redirected efforts toward a landfill. Martha's father also accused Delgado's girlfriend, pointing out that her father worked at a biological waste crematorium. He speculated that Martha's body might have been incinerated. This theory gained media traction, but police continued their search. On November 16, 2009, El Cuco exceeded the maximum period for preventive detention and was moved to supervised housing while awaiting trial. In February 2011, he faced trial again, this time for assault and murder. However, due to insufficient evidence, he was acquitted of these charges, but sentenced to 2 years and 11 months in a juvenile detention center for covering up Carcano's crime. The long-awaited trial against the 4 adult defendants finally began on October 17, 2011. Carcano provided further details, claiming he had killed Martha by striking her with an ashtray during an argument. He also retracted his previous statements about assaulting her, admitting they were lies. His brother, his brother's girlfriend, and Benitez all maintained their innocence, asserting that Carcano had fabricated stories to shift blame away from himself. On November 22, 2011, forensic police confirmed traces of Martha's blood had been found on Miguel Carcano's jacket. Additionally, a roll of fabric tape contained a mixture of his and Maria Garcia's genetic profiles. DNA from Francisco Delgado and Garcia was also discovered on an extension cable, believed to have been used in the crime. This contradicted Garcia's claim that she had only been at the crime scene early in the morning and was unaware of what had happened. When this lie was exposed, she was accused of desecrating Martha's body and covering up the crime. Authorities also identified 5 fingerprints on 3 alcohol bottles, one belonging to El Cuco. The only person against whom there was no direct evidence was Benitez. By this point, the case had captivated the public, and the accused were under intense scrutiny. The initial trials took place under heavy police presence, with the prosecution presenting extensive evidence, including testimony from 90 witnesses, crime scene photographs, DNA findings, and forensic reports. Public outrage was so intense that people pushed against police barriers, demanding to know the whereabouts of Martha's body. Delgado and Garcia arrived at court covering their faces with scarves and sunglasses, but the crowd still recognized them. Some onlookers hurled insults, while others attempted to remove their disguises to expose their identities. During the trial, El Cuco's mother appeared in an interview with her face covered, insisting on her son's innocence and claiming they had no knowledge of Martha's body's whereabouts. Journalists branded her a liar, but she remained unfazed. The interview reportedly earned her €10,000, sparking further controversy. Martha's family later demanded that the payment be regulated and used to contribute toward her son's legal consequences. A key witness later emerged, the taxi driver who had transported Delgado on the night of the crime. He explained that he was particularly observant of his passengers because a fellow taxi driver had been murdered recently. He recalled picking up a bald man with a beard, matching Delgado's description, who was carrying a plastic bag and watching him closely. The driver dropped him off at Leon 13th Street, the crime scene, for an €8 fare. However, Delgado's defense attorney attempted to challenge this testimony. Evidence suggested that the fare for the 2 kilometers traveled during those years should have been €5, not €8, discrediting the statement. When Martha's parents took the stand, they spoke of the immense pain the situation had caused. They had to quit their jobs, start psychiatric medication, and even develop depression. Martha's 2 sisters were also deeply affected, simply wanting the ordeal to end. Adding to their suffering, the jury's verdict in January 2012 left the family dissatisfied. Carcano was found solely responsible for the young girl's murder and sentenced to 21 years and 3 months in prison. Additionally, for the next 30 years, he was banned from living in the city where the victim's family resided. He was also ordered to pay part of the trial costs and compensate the victims' parents with 280,000 euros and each of her sisters with 30,000 euros for the emotional damage caused by Martha's murder and disappearance. Meanwhile, Delgado, Maria Garcia, and Sanel Benitez were acquitted due to a lack of evidence, placing them at the crime scene. The following year, Delgado and Benitez demanded that Martha's family cover the trial costs. Her father vowed to seek justice beyond national borders, declaring Spain's legal system obsolete. He even stated his intention to take the case to Strasbourg, home of the European Parliament and the European Court of Human Rights. In December 2011, Martha's mother wrote a letter to Carcano, pleading with him to end the agony of uncertainty by revealing the location of her daughter's body. She wanted Martha to rest in peace, in a place where she could bring flowers and talk to her. The letter, however, was never answered. On January 24, 2012, 3 years after Martha's disappearance, protests erupted in several Spanish cities, demanding justice for the young girl. Meanwhile, in prison, Carcano was threatened by fellow inmates and later attempted suicide. He was transferred to a therapeutic module where he avoided visitors and phone calls. During his imprisonment, Carcano devised multiple versions of the crime, up to 7, causing several of his lawyers to resign. In his 2013 account, he implicated someone close to him as the real culprit. He alleged that he and his brother had argued over the mortgage for their home at León 13. In this version, Delgado, his brother, struck Martha with the butt of a gun when she tried to intervene. Afterward, Delgado made a phone call, but Carcano claimed he didn't know who it was to or what was said. He then fled, leaving Martha lifeless in the room. According to Carcano, El Cuco arrived shortly after, and together they used a wheelchair to transport the body to the Mahala farm in Lananda, where they buried it. Martha's parents believed this version and continued to hold Carcano in high regard despite everything. They requested the case be reopened, this time focusing on his brother. However, neither the prosecution nor the judge found his statements credible. Desperate for answers, Martha's father visited Carcano in prison, urging him to cooperate. He even offered to buy the house at León 13 and promised Carcano ownership of it after his sentence if he revealed where Martha's body was buried. The search for Martha's remains became one of the most expensive in the country's history, spanning land and sea. The first search focused on the Guadalquivir River, but inconsistencies arose. When authorities attempted to reconstruct the crime, it became clear that it was physically impossible for 3 people, Carcano, El Cuco, and Benitez, to transport the body on a motorcycle. In the reenactment, the body fell as soon as the engine started. Later, Carcano claimed the body had been disposed of in a trash bin, prompting an extensive landfill search. However, due to the passage of time and the massive amount of waste, the search team estimated they would need to remove 40,000 tons of garbage. After 32 days, nothing was found. Over time, Carcano provided up to 4 different locations for Martha's remains, triggering multiple fruitless searches. At one point, then Interior Minister Alfredo Perez was forced to halt the search due to budget constraints. In April 2013, after accusing his brother of being the real murderer, Carcano gave yet another location near the municipality of La Encarnada. Despite his dwindling credibility, authorities decided to search again. Carcano accompanied police to the supposed burial site, but failed to give precise directions, merely sketching a vague area. Investigators scanned 10,000 square meters across 6 farms, focusing on areas with recent soil disturbances, but once again, they found nothing. At the parents' request, the search was halted until 2015. Meanwhile, the public ministry ordered the defendants to compensate the Interior Ministry with 66,329 euros for investigative costs. Oscar, an undercover agent, posed as a criminal to gain the trust of Rosalia Cuco's mother, hoping to extract a confession. Over time, they developed a close relationship, meeting every few days and speaking daily. Rosalia trusted him enough to give him the keys to her home. He earned her confidence, took long walks with her along the beach, and even convinced her they would leave together for a fresh start. A country in Eastern Europe, once everything ended for her son, for 2.5 years, Oscar recorded 600 hours of conversations between Roselia and her surroundings. By October 2011, El Cuco had already been granted release permits from the juvenile center where he had been sent for covering up for Carcano. During one conversation, Oscar asked the young man if he thought the police were following him. El Cuco responded affirmatively, asserting that they were doing so to find out where they had disposed of Martha. This statement forever incriminated him. Realizing his mistake immediately after speaking, El Cuco quickly tried to retract his words, insisting he had done nothing. Oscar, however, played along as if he hadn't noticed. In other recordings, El Cuco mocked the police's efforts to find Martha's body, while Roselia criticized the investigators, calling them incompetent for failing to audit the calls from her mobile phone. Despite Oscar's hard work, those 600 hours of recordings were never used in court. Only in 2022, 13 years after Martha's disappearance, did the undercover operation yield results. On May 26, 2022, dozens of people, especially neighbors of Martha's family, gathered outside the courthouse to support her parents as a new judicial process began. Roselia and El Cuco arrived under heavy police protection. The young man was completely covered, wearing a large hoodie, a balaclava, sunglasses, and gloves. Roselia, too, was disguised, wearing sunglasses, a mask, and a headscarf. Back in 2011, El Cuco had testified that he had not been in the apartment on Leon 13th Street where the crime took place. Instead, he claimed he was with friends, returned home at 11:30 p.m., and met his mother's partner, who had gone out to take out the trash. He then went up to his apartment and did not leave for the rest of the night. Roselia, for her part, stated that she and her partner had gone out for drinks around 11:30 p.m. and returned home around 1:30 a.m. on January 25th, finding her son asleep. El Cuco later confessed that, on the night of January 24th, Carcano called him after murdering Martha and asked for help burying her body. Along with Benitez, they used his mother's car and went to Leon 13, where Delgado was also present. Meanwhile, Roselia was at the bar, staying there until 4:30 a.m. When she returned home, her son was still missing. Both El Cuco and his mother were charged with perjury, aggravated by their obstruction of the judicial process, which had been ongoing since 2009. They eventually accepted responsibility. The trial proceeded, but the judge unexpectedly suspended all scheduled witness testimonies. This devastated Martha's parents, who had hoped that Carcano's testimony would finally reveal their daughter's whereabouts. On June 9, 2022, both El Cuco and Roselia were sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. The judge also imposed a fine of €1,440 each and a civil liability payment of €30,000 to Martha's parents. But for them, the money meant nothing. They wanted only one thing: to find their daughter's body. That same year, the investigative judge authorized experts to access Carcano and Martha's mobile phones. However, permission was denied for accessing the phones of others involved, as there was no concrete evidence against them. Carcano willingly allowed his phone to be examined, insisting that the evidence would point to his brother as the true murderer. The main objective remained the same: locating Martha's body. Although searching for new leads in the case was officially prohibited, the expert never submitted his findings, and the case was eventually closed indefinitely. In November 2022, 13 years after Martha's murder, the civil court officially closed the investigation into her body's whereabouts, citing the expiration of the legally stipulated investigation period and the lack of significant discoveries. Martha's parents came to terms with the painful truth: Carcano would never reveal where their daughter was buried. With no answers, they made the heartbreaking decision to sell the apartment where the crime had taken place. Martha's case now joins countless other unresolved cases worldwide, with files gathering dust on forgotten desks. That's all for today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and leave your comments, always with respect for the victim's family. See you soon.